We are entering a new era of innovation, where technology and the power of AI are unlocking new possibilities and transforming how we work. Traditional enterprise technology strategies have often occurred in a siloed manner, leading to fragmented investments and stifled innovation. As organizations strive for agility, scalability, resiliency, and innovation, it's clear that a more flexible and adaptive approach is needed. To do this, businesses need a technology platform that can support their growth, drive innovation, and provide real-time insights. That's why Azure is embracing an adaptive cloud approach. Azure's adaptive cloud approach unifies teams, sites, and systems in a single operations, innovation, and insight platform. This empowers businesses to simultaneously manage operations, scale applications, and leverage insights across hybrid, multi-cloud, edge, and IoT environments. Imagine a global quick-serve restaurant managing and securing their hybrid, multi-cloud, and edge servers from a single pane of glass. Picture a sports retailer rolling out new apps across boundaries with unprecedented speed and agility. Envision a multinational manufacturer gleaning key business insights centrally to optimize their globally distributed operations. We are bringing our vision of the adaptive cloud to life by building on the significant progress made with Azure Arc and AI-powered management tools. The adaptive cloud is more than a solution for today. It's a strategic foundation for the future. When you embrace adaptive cloud, you are making durable investments in your business, helping you to be better positioned to anticipate market shifts, integrate emerging technologies, and foster ongoing innovation.
Hello, everybody. Good morning. I'm Bernardo Caldas. I lead the Adaptive Cloud product team here at Microsoft. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. If you work on hybrid, edge, IoT, multi-cloud, this is really the session for you. We've designed this as kind of a bird's eye view into all the scenarios that we focus on and the solutions. And we're going to point you to sessions you can go to get even more details about what we're delivering. I wanted to start with a few trends that we're seeing in the market. This is a study that we did with Forrester that looked into how needs are evolving in the marketplace. And what we found was that 75% of survey respondents believe that it's critical for them and for their organization's success to integrate cloud and edge as a single platform. Nearly 70% of the respondents said that by 2026, the data collected at the edge will be sent to the cloud, nearly 70% of that data. And about a large number of companies are saying they're going to bring together their cloud and edge organizations in order to tap into these new trends and these new opportunities. And this is not new. This is happening over the last several years. But what's new now is the volume of data that needs to go from edge to cloud and cloud to edge to enable these business processes. As I talk to customers, I see many customers still operate with this kind of approach where they have different teams for different environments. They may have a cloud team that works on the cloud environment. They may have an IT team that works on their on-prem environments. They may have a different team dealing with their OT infrastructure for business operations. And that causes a number of challenges around sprawling systems, siloed processes, workflows get more challenging, and most importantly, access to data becomes increasingly more challenging as they try to tap into that data to enable the AI scenarios that they're looking to enable. What they tell us they're looking for is essentially a new approach, and you saw from the survey many customers are already going in that direction, where they're bringing these teams together on a common operations management and data framework. And that allows them to enable these teams to collaborate more effectively, share data, share best practices, and then essentially innovate faster. And this is what takes us to the adaptive cloud approach. This is the approach that we've taken to build a unified platform across all these different scenarios around hybrid, multi-cloud, edge computing, distributed computing, and IoT that allows our customers to go and innovate faster, collaborate better, share data, share best practices, share business processes, all on a common framework. The adaptive cloud approach enabled by Azure Arc enables 4 key scenarios. The first one enables our customers to operate with an AI-enhanced central management and security. think about managing and securing all of your resources, not just those in a particular environment, but across the globe, whether they're in the cloud, whether they are on premises, whether they're in the OT environment. Also enables you to rapidly develop and scale applications across those boundaries. Again, the applications development also happen across those different areas, and it's important to have a common platform and a common methodology to go and do that. And finally, we also enable unification of data and AI, so you can actually harvest data from your operations, do some local processing of data, but then flow data up to the cloud if you're trying to look for global insights. And this all happens across a variety of different infrastructures, many of which are existing infrastructure that customers already have in place, but also new infrastructure that's being developed to enable new scenarios and use cases, again, across the cloud, edge, hybrid, multi-cloud, all these different locations. So what I wanted to do next is to show you a quick demo of the Azure Arc experience. Here I am in the portal, and I just wanted to show you the kinds of resources that you can see. So here is the view of the resources. So you see some Azure Stack HCI clusters there here. You see some IoT assets represented in Azure, again, bringing them to a common framework. You see some Kubernetes clusters, and this might be Kubernetes clusters running anywhere. In this case, they happen to be running on Azure Local, but this could be any Kubernetes running in any location, and they would show up here. You see also a number of different servers that have been enabled with Azure Arc. So you see different servers running on different environments. There's a couple there on AWS, a couple there on VMware as well. You see Linux servers, you see Windows servers. So essentially, whatever infrastructure you have in place, you're able to Arc enable and bring into this environment so you can have a common data plane across them. Here you also see some point of sale systems that are running, in this case on Azure Stack HCI. Azure Stack HCI has Arc already built in, so all those virtual machines show up here in the same view. So you see them showing up here. And then you see some SQL servers as well that have been Arc enabled. I will transition here to the summary view just to show you how this is running globally. So these resources are distributed around the world. So again, you have one way of managing all your global resources, whatever those resources are, whether they're existing resources we have or new resources that you're deploying. And now, because this is now showing up in Azure, you can use Azure tools to manage those resources. So in this case, I'm showing you advisor recommendations that you can see running across all those resources, regardless of where they're running. And if I go on security, you can see some security recommendations here as well. So very, very easy to go and use the same kind of practices that you would have if you're managing your resources in the public cloud can now be extended to manage resources anywhere. Now, this isn't new. We have over 39,000 organizations today using Azure Arc. That number is growing 80% year over year. So if I was having this talk last year, I would be quoting 21,000 customers now, 39,000 customers. And you see customers across various industries. It's a very kind of horizontal play in a sense that you have manufacturers, hospitals, retailers, and so on. So there's just a wide variety of customers that have already started taking advantage of this. I know many of you in the room are probably already familiar with Azure Arc as well. Next, I wanted to play a video to highlight one of the customer stories from Emirates Global Aluminum. Let's hear it.
Here in Emirates Global Aluminium, we are innovating aluminium to make modern life possible. We're the world's largest premium aluminium producer and fifth largest aluminium producer in the world. As a manufacturing company, we have a lot of critical infrastructure that we're running in our plants. And that infrastructure is what keeps the metal flowing 24 hours a day. That's why we adopted a hybrid cloud approach. We use the best of the Azure public cloud, but we also brought the power of Azure back to our plant. In our public clouds, we're using many Azure services such as Azure Kubernetes services, Azure Databricks. What makes us actually unique, however, is how we extended that public cloud into our plants. with services such as Azure Hyperconverged Infrastructure, Azure Arc as well, to mimic on both sides the same technology stack. When we compare our old setup of running AI compared to our new hybrid setup, we observed a drop in cost by more than 80%. Right? It's massive. When we look at the response time of the artificial intelligence, how quickly it can take a decision, it's 13 times faster now. And with Azure Stack HCI, Hyperconverged Infrastructure, we are now able to replicate that everywhere else, enabling other countries to do aluminum smelting with our technology. And that unlocks potentially a new digital revenue stream for the company.
So one of the key aspects you saw highlighted in the video was this notion of flexibility for workload placement. And that means looking at infrastructure as a continuum from the public cloud, but then going into the places that matter. In their case, they saw some cost savings by moving some workloads closer to the operations using Azure Stack HCI. Which brings me to talk about the range of infrastructure choices that Azure provides. So if you look just broadly into our portfolio, we have the largest network or the largest number of public regions available that enables you to scale your business globally and locally now with options that we've announced here at Ignite. Of course, IT is built into all our infrastructure offerings. You can use that with, of course, our public cloud, but now that can be extended, as we saw, for resources that are even running outside of our public cloud that could be running anywhere. AI is also a key use case for us, again, in the cloud and at the edge. So when you think about building AI solutions, we think about solutions that are going to span cloud and edge, and then find, again, the right place for the workloads to run, to harvest the right data and the right insights at the right time. And finally, sustainability is, of course, a core focus for us and a core focus of how we build these infrastructure solutions. I wanted to shift gears to talk about local infrastructure. We believe that many workloads have migrated and will continue to migrate to the cloud, but there's obviously many workloads that will not for a number of reasons. One of the key reasons, as you saw in the video, local AI inferencing is a very common use case where you see customers using local processing to go and deal with signals that are being produced in specific locations. Think of smart checkouts with cameras or pipeline leak detection scenarios if you're in the energy business as examples of that. A second use case is mission-critical business continuity. These are situations where you want your business operations to run regardless of your network connection. If you lose a network connection, you want business to continue to run, you want it to continue to be able to transact. Point-of-sale systems are examples of that, production lines, those can't stop. If you're collecting data and taking actions in real time in a production floor, you don't want it to rely necessarily on network connectivity if it's not the right thing to do. So having the option to do that locally is great. Near real-time systems, a couple of examples there. And finally, there's many industries that are regulated that have restrictions into where their data and workloads need to run. There's also even restrictions on where the control plane run at times, depending on the geography and the industry. So it's really important that these scenarios then have a place to go and be part of that system that we call the adaptive cloud. So here at Ignite, we introduced Azure Local. Azure Local is our cloud infrastructure for distributed locations. It is enabled by Azure Arc, meaning Azure Arc is built in. And I want to highlight a few different aspects of the solution here today. First is that Azure Local enables you to operate and scale with the power of the cloud. What that means is when you deploy Azure Local, you're choosing to use the cloud as your control plane for the most part, and then you're using the cloud to manage that distributed state. So if you have a global operation and you have Azure Local instances across a very vast network of, say, factories or retail stores, you're able to use the cloud and cloud services like Azure Monitor to go and manage that. The second is that Azure Local enables you to run all your apps. I hear from many customers that they are modernizing, that they want to go to, say, Kubernetes and containers, and they want a solution that can just run containers, and that's supported in Azure Local. But they also, at times, want to run line of business applications that are pre-existing, running on VMs, and they want those to coexist in the same solution. So Azure Local is ready for all those use cases, so those can coexist on a single infrastructure. The third point that I think is really critical is the flexibility to meet your requirements and budget. Many customers that I talk to, they have needs that span kind of this very, very small kind of, almost like Nook-style gateway, industrial gateway size, all the way to like rack-scale data center type solution. And being able to kind of span that range is really important. So in the flexibility to hit budgets too, many customers that I talk to, they start with, your solution needs to fit, this budget per site, whether that site is a retail store or a factory, and you're almost like designing from a specific budget that you can afford. So having the flexibility to choose what hardware form factor makes sense that does the job and fit the budget is really critical. And finally, security, as I said, is built in and a very integral part of everything that we do. In the case of Azure Local, security is built in from the firmware all the way up. And then we use cloud security on top of that to ensure that everything is running smoothly. So that's Azure Local for you. Next, I want to transition to another scenario, which is operating with AI-enhanced management and security. So I'm going to invite Satya Vel on stage to walk you through that. Satya, come on in.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm really excited to share with you some of the innovation we have around management and security with the adaptive cloud vision that Bernardo just talked about. How many of you have actually using Azure Arc today in production? That is awesome to see. I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about some of the core capabilities we provide with Azure Arc for management. And to start off with, one of the primary use cases a lot of our customers use us is for configuration management and governance. So being able to apply a consistent set of policies across your entire environment and manage and verify your compliance. Another common scenario is around resiliency and observability. So through Azure Arc, you can use Azure Monitor to monitor the health of your systems with performance metrics and give deep insights into the health of your environment. Security is another big scenario that we provide through Azure Arc, and you can use it to check the security posture of your entire environment and also detect vulnerabilities across your various systems. And one of the things that we're really excited to share with you all is some of the new Copilot investments we've done around the manageability space, where you can now automate a lot of the management tasks through our Copilot integration with Azure Copilot. So one of the new things that we announced recently that will be available is you can actually use Azure Copilot to create Terraform templates or ARM templates, so which you can use to deploy resources, something I recommend you guys all try out. How many of you today in this room are responsible for managing servers running on-premise or in the public cloud? Could I get a raise of hands? Awesome. It's great that you guys are in the right session today. I wanted to spend a few moments to highlight a few of these services that we have today. The first one is Azure Update Manager. So a lot of our enterprise customers used to use tools like as SCCM, WSUS, or a slew of security box products. But our customers really need a more scalable and modern approach for management. And this is where Arc really provides a great experience to not only manage your on-premise environments, but also your multi-cloud resources in a consistent way. So Azure Update Management is a way to patch your servers in a consistent manner. And with Azure Policy, you can actually apply governance across your systems in a seamless experience. Another common capability is Azure Monitor. Again, talking about monitoring the health and reliability of systems is something we provide, and Defender for all your security needs. But what I really wanted to highlight in the slide below is you'll notice is we can use the same set of capabilities to manage your Azure infrastructure, your multi-cloud infrastructure, as well as your on-premise infrastructure. So if you have Windows or Linux servers running on VMware, Nutanix, or even System Center, you can use Azure Arc to manage those systems in a consistent manner. So for today's demo, I'm going to put on my cloud engineer IT admin hat, and I'm going to use the Contoso Healthcare as my canonical company that I have systems running on-premise as well as in AWS. And so I'm going to show you in the next set of demos on how I'm using Azure Arc to manage resources running on-premise as well as my AWS environments. Awesome. So this is the Azure portal, if you haven't seen it before. And the view that I'm sharing here is the Microsoft Defender experience. And what you'll quickly notice is I have a set of my Azure subscriptions, but I also have my AWS accounts as well as my GCP projects. So really pulling in all the rich data from my heterogeneous environment into a central place to manage my environment. Another core capability with Microsoft Defender is something called security posture. Security posture is essentially a tool that goes and assesses the various different resources in your environment and gives you an aggregated score on how your environment is doing. And we do this not just for your on-prem resources, but we do this for Azure, AWS, as well as GCP. One of my favorite views in Defender is the inventory view. So over here, you can quickly see that I have a list of all my resources that are in my environment. And not only can I drill into a specific resource, I can see all the recommendations on things that I can do to help improve my security score. So I have things such as enabling TLS on my machines is something that we recommend from a security standpoint. And so I can drill into a specific recommendation or a best practice that we have here. And not only does it tell me what actions I should take, but what I can do to go and make sure that I remediate these resources so that they meet the best practices in my environment. So really, really rich functionality through our Defender capabilities. The next scenario is around Azure Policy. How many of you all use Azure Policy today? Awesome. Again, great to see. So Azure Policy is our way to apply configuration across your various different environments and ensure that teams are following best practices. So Microsoft, as a company ourselves, uses Azure Policies across all our data centers to ensure that we're meeting different regulatory compliance as well as best practices. So the Microsoft security team, in order to meet various different regulatory compliance needs, build policies to help us meet HIPAA, SOX, and these different types of compliance rules. And what we've done is we've actually made these policy rules available for you customers so that you can meet your own regulatory compliance needs as well. So some of the built-in policies we provide out of the box, we have about 83 different built-in policies. So we have things for FedRAMP, PCI, CIS, HIPAA, SOX, a huge number of compliance built-in policies that you can leverage to help meet your own regulatory compliance needs as well. And the best part about this all, it is free and included as part of Azure Policy. So you're not paying anything extra to get any of this functionality. It's free for you to use today. The next scenario that I wanted to take a moment and talk about is around resiliency. So recently, there's been a slew of incidents that have happened. Most recently, there was an update from a third party that was deployed on a bunch of Windows machines that caused a bunch of reboots, and it was a nightmare for a lot of our customers. I can hear some of the chuckles in the room as well. And one of the core components that we really encourage our customers to use is Windows recovery. So Windows recovery is a tool to help you make sure your servers can recover from catastrophic failures, such as configuration issues or bad updates in your environment. But one of the things that we noticed is not all customers or not all servers have WinRE enabled by default. And so in this Contoso Server 2, you can see that WinRE is actually disabled on my particular environment. But through Azure Policy, I can write a query to go and check which of the machines in my environment are missing WinRE, and also write a remediation to go and enable WinRE on those machines as well, which is a really powerful scenario as you think about it. So here I have WinRE enabled, and to show you that this is not a smokes and mirrors demo, I can actually show you that we have this audit policy over here that's gone and checked for my Contoso machine 2 to show that it's actually WinRE is disabled on this machine. So now I know that this machine is out of compliance, and I can take a remediation action, which is basically executing a script or a template to go and remediate and enable WinRE on that machine. So pretty cool scenario, something I really recommend and encourage you all to go and try out if you get a chance. The next demo that I wanted to share with you is Azure Update Manager. Again, a lot of our customers that use traditional update management tools such as WSUS or SCCM are now moving to use Azure Update Manager so they can apply updates in a consistent way on Azure as well as their on-premise resources. So as you'll see here, I can see a great breakdown of the different updates required in my environments. I can see all the security updates, the critical updates, the service packs. And what's great about Azure Update Manager is it not only does Windows machines, it also does Linux machines as well. So really a comprehensive solution for both your Windows and Linux systems. One of the common questions we get asked by our customers, hey, we could do a lot of custom configuration with these existing tools, right? So I have patch windows, I want to do my updates in ring-based manner. We provide these same capabilities with Azure Update Manager as well. So here, for example, you can come and set your dynamic scopes. Think of your dynamic scopes as being rings. So you can say, these set of machines are part of this ring 1, and these set of machines are part of ring 2, and you can apply these updates in a ring-based manner to ensure you're doing SDP on these updates as well. And so, for example, if a lot of the companies, including Microsoft, we have maintenance windows when we apply updates, and so you can come here and schedule your maintenance windows and define when these updates get applied to each of the different rings in your environment. My next demo that I wanted to share is a quick demo around Azure Monitor and some of the great health and performance metrics that we collect. So Azure Monitor is a really great tool if you're looking to monitor, core system metrics such as CPU, memory, disk. If you wanted to raise alerts on any of these thresholds, Azure Monitor gives you a really robust solution to look at your performance metrics across your entire fleet of systems and detect anomalies on your systems as well. This evening at 4 o'clock, there's a session on Azure Monitor, which will also talk about how to use Azure Monitor for your on-premise system. So I highly encourage you to attend that session, and we'll go into a lot more depth about what you can do with Azure Monitor and Azure Arc. And finally, one of the common questions we get from a lot of our enterprise customers is, I don't know what's running in my environment, right? And this is a real challenge for customers because there's server sprawl, there's resource sprawl, especially now with cloud being enabled, customers have resources running in AWS and Azure and on-premise, and gaining insight into what's available and what's running everywhere is a real challenge for our customers. So through Azure Arc and Azure Resource Graph, we essentially have an inventory of all the resources running in your environment. So this dashboard that I built over here is powered by Azure Resource Graph. And what you'll notice is it gives me a breakdown of all the resources in my environment. So I have about 5,000 resources. But you'll notice here is that it gives me the number of network security groups I have created in my Azure environment. But I can now also see my EC2 subnets that are there in my AWS environment, as well as KMS aliases as well. So KMS is a secret store in AWS that you can use. So really providing you a centralized inventory solution across your on-premise and multi-cloud environment. Additionally, we give you great insights. So if you want to see what's your breakdown of Windows Server and Linux servers running in your environment, we can give you that data, as well as what types of SKUs of Windows running is insights that we provide you today. And finally, this is not just for operating systems. We also do other resource types. So here I can show you a breakdown of all the different SQL databases that are there, what types of SQL is running in the environment, what is the capacity on those systems as well. So really rich information provided to you in a centralized way through Azure Arc and the various management capabilities that we offer. So I'm a huge soccer fan, and I was really excited that I want to share this story. So 𝗦𝗽𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀 was a customer that had a lot of our Microsoft on-premise management and security tools that they were using before. And they have actually now completely transitioned to using Azure Arc and our cloud-based solutions for management. And one of the reasons I'm sharing this story is, we really wanted to show that and demonstrate that Azure Arc and some of the management capabilities that we have today is a great story for those customers looking to make that transition to using more cloud-based management and security solutions. With that, I want to say thank you and invite Angie to come and share about writing scalable applications on the Arc platform. Thank you again for your time. Awesome job.
Hi, good morning, everyone. So the scenario 2 of the Adaptive Cloud is aimed for developers. And it's aimed for developers to more easily develop and scale applications across boundaries. And so we've made significant investments in the space. The investments have been focused on 3 core priorities. The first priority is ensuring that the developer platform is foundational. And that's where we remain closely aligned to the open source community. And we have chosen Kubernetes as our orchestration engine. But we further simplified it by extending those Azure capabilities to these Arc-enabled Kubernetes clusters. And the second priority that we have focused our investments on is ensuring that the developer experience is easy to use. And so those beloved tools that you're familiar with is brought over into this developer environment. And you could continue to incorporate your DevOps process throughout, whether you're developing your applications for the cloud or locally at the edge. And lastly, we want to enable developers to modernize their legacy applications by using these first-party Azure services on these Kubernetes clusters, or taking advantage of some third-party offers. And so I'm just going to jump into a little bit more detail of what I mean here. In this diagram, across the bottom, you're going to see the different types of infrastructure that you could modernize and develop your applications for, whether it's multi-cloud, whether it's on Azure Local that Bernardo just announced, and whether it's just on-premise. And we have a Kubernetes option that would be available for you with these extended Azure capabilities. With that said, there's 2 new ones that we recently generally announced, and it's based on a lot of developer feedback that we've received. The first one, developers were asking for an easier way to store data locally at the edge and be able to synchronize that data back to across their Kubernetes clusters. And that is really for scenarios where there's poor network coverage and there needs to be able to automatically synchronize between those different applications. And that's where Azure Container Storage is now available for developers. And the second extended Azure capability that's available for these Kubernetes options is it has security as top of mind. And so there needs to be a way for developers to store their application secrets, such as your connection strings, your encryption keys, and that's where the Azure Key Vault provider is available. And at Ignite, there's a big announcement from our team, because we not only just want to offer our first-party Azure services. At Ignite here, we're announcing the Azure Arc ISV Partner Program. And with this partner program, we want to enable our partners to be able to publish their offerings onto these Arc-enabled Kubernetes clusters. And today, within the Azure Marketplace, we have our partners like Minio, Cloud-Casa, Redis, MongoDB, and DataStax that's already available, and we're only going to continue to add more. And then above that, those are the beloved dev tools that everyone's familiar with. You got Visual Studio, you have GitHub, you could light up GitOps so that you could incorporate your DevOps process, and you could even use GitHub Copilot. And the third and final scenario for this session today is focused on enabling our customers to unify their sprawled data and infuse AI across their distributed estate. And so, I'm sure a lot of folks in the room, your organization, you guys have your own AI corporate strategy. And in order for this AI to be truly transformational, we need to ensure that we're enabling our customers to get access to high-quality data. And that's been a common challenge amongst our customers. And so this is where we're encouraging the customers to be able to have a more modular design thinking approach, where you bring in that centrally managed control plane to have better observability, management, security, governance across those distributed workloads. And then on top of that, you have the unified data plane, such as OneLake within Microsoft Fabric. And even just yesterday, we announced Azure IoT Operations. This feature is a major release for us because now we're really enabling our customers now to be able to ingest data, retrieve data that's sitting at the edge that has been traditionally very challenging. So at those facility sites, along the pipelines, at your compressor stations, your point of sale machines, and you can ingest that in real time. You could take advantage now of this platform, perform computations at the edge, transform and cleanse that data, normalize that data before bringing it up into the data plane. And then once you have all that data available now, whether it's locally or distributed across your global workloads, you can merge that in with your enterprise line of business data. And now you have the full enterprise view of how your operations is performing and generate those actionable tasks and insights and infuse AI through this process. So I'm just going to jump into demo here and show you what that whole modular end-to-end design would look like. So on the screen here, you're going to see Contoso Global Operations. It's the example that I'm laying here is very similar to that aluminum demo that was just the video that was showcased. And this hypermarket customer has a retail arm, a manufacturing arm, and an energy arm. And they need to be able to have better observability and control over their operations. And so right here is the Azure portal. And this is from the point of view of the IT administrator. And because we're in Chicago, I just thought, you know what, it'd be great. Let's click into the Chicago site within this Azure portal. As you can see, here are all the Arc-enabled resources that are available for the IT administrator to operate and have full visibility on how everything's performing. One of the few things that I wanted to highlight here is that, there's 10 Arc-enabled virtual machines that are running the line of business application data. And then as part of the Azure IoT operations, there's a new resource type called assets. And here at this Chicago site, they have set up the ability to stream in from 3 different asset type units and stream that into the Azure IoT operations platform. And so within the Azure IoT operations for the Chicago site, as you can see, it is running off of a Kubernetes cluster. And those 3 assets that were visible within the Azure portal are now visible within the Azure IoT platform. If I click on this and drill down to view the details here, at this specific facility site, you can see that there's a dairy fridge unit, HVAC unit, and a produce fridge unit streaming in. You could set specific tags that would be associated to each of the assets that you're provisioning. And and these tags, it could be things like your pump details, your temperature, cooler unit details, and you could stream that in. What's great now is how easy you could configure your IoT operations platform by configuring your data flow endpoints. And in this example here, I am treating my endpoint as the Microsoft Fabric. All the data is going to be streaming in here. And the data flows for the individual assets that I have configured. Here's an example of the dairy fridge data flow. As you can see, it's streaming in from the asset dairy fridge. And here, this is where the interesting stuff is happening, where you could perform these transformations at the edge. This is where you could do your calculations, your filtering, your renaming to normalize that data so that it's usable within the enterprise once it lands in. And here's the end-to-end approach within the unified data plane, Microsoft Fabric here. I have streamed in that dairy fridge data in real time, and now it's showcasing the power consumption, the cooler details, and now as the operator of that facility, I'm now able to be proactive with ensuring that my assets will run properly and there's no disruptions to my operations. And also from an enterprise perspective, I could better manage my supply chain. So moving over just to conclude this whole modular design, as you can see, it's very simple here. On the left-hand side, you have your different field assets sitting at those different site locations. All those field assets could stream into the Azure IoT Operations Platform. This Azure IoT Operations Platform is sitting on an Arc-enabled Kubernetes cluster. On the right there is your line of business application data that was on those Arc-enabled VMs. You stream that into your unified data plane. In my case, it's Microsoft Fabric. And then on top of that, you also have your operational control plane. Once you have all that in place, now you could take advantage of all the different copilots that is available through the Microsoft stack, or even create your own operator copilot that you could run at the edge or locally. So now I'm going to hand it over to Bernardo for closing.
Thank you, Angie. All right, so this is a bird's eye view of the key services, many of which we talked about in this session. So I just wanted to leave you with that view. We talked about the management scenarios, developing applications at the edge. We talked about harvesting data from operations, industrial assets, and so on, and a new infrastructure option for you with Azure Local. We made a number of announcements here at Ignite. So this is a slightly busy slide there, but highlights some of the announcements. I would just call out some of my favorites that we didn't cover in this session. One is, many of you are familiar probably with Azure Migrate and the tooling that's available to move servers from on-premises to Azure. Azure Migrate now has been expanded to help you migrate resources to Azure Arc, so you can easily Arc-enable those resources, as well as to Azure Local. So you can choose where you're going to move those workloads depending on your business needs, and now Azure Migrate support those additional scenarios. I also wanted to highlight this Windows Server Management enabled by Azure Arc. This is a great offer that we announced here at Ignite for software assurance customers and subscription customers. This gives you access to 20+ Azure services that you can use to manage your Windows Server estate. This is one of the most popular scenarios for Azure Arc today. And then lastly, I wanted to highlight the Azure Arc Gateway. One of the things that we've heard from customers is configuring their network to go and participate in this Azure Arc framework that we talked about. Sometimes requires too many configuration changes. Azure Arc Gateway was designed to solve that problem, so that's now available for you. So just calling out a few things there. I know many of you are familiar with Azure Arc, have been using Azure Arc. For those of you that are not, or even those that are but want to go deeper, Azure Arc Jumpstart is just a great resource for you to go to and get code samples, architectural diagrams, use cases. So every new thing that we put out, we also put out some, we light that up on Jumpstart, so you can actually go and have access and play with it in the most kind of seamless way. As I said in the beginning, this session was designed to be an overview of our adaptive cloud approach. We have some other sessions that drill deeper into each of the scenarios that we talked about. So you're going to basically take one of the scenarios and spend 45 minutes on it. So I really encourage you to take a picture here, look out for these sessions, and then go and learn more about what we brought here to Ignite. We're really excited to engage with you. Angie, Satya, and I are going to stick around for a few minutes. If you have questions, come up front and give us some feedback as well on how the session went. Thank you very much for attending today.